Okay, says we're live, so we'll go ahead. Hi, everyone. Welcome. So we'll go ahead and just give people like 5 minutes to join us, and then we'll get started on our questions.
Can you see who joins the stream and everything?
I was
I don't
gonna
think,
say.
yeah, I
I
don't think
can't
we can
see.
see who. It just says, I think it says up here the number.
Oh,
Does?
Yeah, it
Really?
says it on my end, but I
Oh,
think
it
so.
might be because you're the host,
Yeah, I
Oh,
probably.
think
yeah,
it does.
true. Okay, let's just make sure. Let me see. Okay, yeah.
so does this allow you to record and then upload later to Winnie?
No, so it goes live right now. So
Uh,
immediately after I think it ends, then it uploads to because people on Facebook can join in right now, and people on YouTube are able to
Oh,
see. So it's live basically. hmm
oh, okay.
hmm So yeah, we'll just give people till 4 or 5, and then we'll go ahead and get started with the questions.
Okay.
I don't know. This is a new system, so I don't know how to see because I know we got like 2 questions from people on Instagram, but I don't know how I'll see questions. But hopefully something pops up or something because I don't see any. Oh, maybe the chat.
yeah.
I see a chat.
hmm
We'll see. Okay.
Does anybody use Reddit?
Oh, I love Reddit. It's my new
Mm-hmm.
Same.
Instagram.
Did you see the place a pixel challenge that was going on?
No,
Oh,
I
you
haven't seen
should.
it.
It's called r/place. You
Okay.
can place your own pixel tile.
Oh wow.
And it's like the world creates an art by
Mm-hmm.
placing like 1 pixel per person. It's so cool.
I need to. Yeah. Okay, so we
Nice.
have 8 people who are in, so I'll just go ahead and get started. So hello everyone, welcome. My name is Winnie Bush, and from the YouTube channel Winning with Winnie. So today I have some of my international friends who are here to kind of talk about some of the challenges, the good, the bad, the ugly about job searching as an international student. So we do have a list of questions. I think about 15 questions for them to answer, but throughout the conversation, please utilize the chat if you have any questions for them, or if you're just I don't know, just whatever you want to put. You want to put an emoji in there, you just want to say hi, like go ahead and put that in the comments. But yeah, so we're excited to get started. So the first question I have for the panel is could you please share a little bit about yourself and what you do in your current role? And also, I know it's a really long question, but also talk a little bit about your journey to the United States. And then anyone who wants to go can go ahead.
I can go. So yeah. So my name is Gurveen. I currently work as a patient care nursing assistant at Cleveland Clinic. Um, and my I'm from India. I'm from Delhi in India, and my journey to United States was basically I came to United States to attend undergrad college in Kent State in 2018. I was a bio pre-med major, but then I switched to a different concentration. I was molecular and cellular concentration. um, then I completed my undergrad in 3.5 years, cut it down to from one semester, and did a lot of on campus or stuff. Like I was involved in a lot of organizations, was a president and a vice president for two of them. And then I was also as a resident assistant. So I was just too involved. And then now I recently got this job at Cleveland Clinic. So yeah, I'm just doing that right now. I'm taking a gap year to apply for master's program to get this time to get the experience and work. So
Thank you, Gervin.
I can go next. Hi, my name's Nitya. I have a very similar journey as Gurveen. We joined Kent State at the same time, and this, it's a pretty similar program, different concentrations. We had a lot of classes together. Currently, I'm working as a research associate too with Fate Therapeutics. It is a cancer immunotherapy company that comes up with different types of cell therapies for curing cancer. We all know curing cancer via chemotherapy is very painful. So the company that I work with basically, and the role that I work in, we try to come up with therapies that make curing cancer easier. We can eliminate it for a longer time and basically less painful, slightly less painful, so that the patient does not have to go through a lot. Um, my work specifically is just expanding the therapy, expanding the drug use, and expanding the cells, and putting it out there. My journey, like I mentioned, very similar to Green. Came to US in the August 2018, joined Kent State for a biotech concentration program, and graduated this December and got this job. And excited to talk about how I got it.
Okay, so hi everyone. My name is Blair Thompson. I am from the Bahamas, and I currently work as a hall coordinator at the University of Iowa, and I oversee a residence hall. So my work is in student affairs within higher education, just like Winnie, sort of, kind of, but she works in other area. How I started this journey. So I came to the US in December of 2014 to start my academic undergrad program at Johnson & Wales University in Miami, which was in culinary arts and food service management. After I graduated in 2018, I actually went back home to work for a year in the culinary field. And then I decided, hey, I like college, let me see what more it has to offer. So I then applied for master's programs in higher ed and student affairs. And then I came to Kent State in August of 2019 to pursue my studies. I graduated last year in May, and then I started working at the University of Iowa that July. So currently in Iowa City, Iowa. Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Okay, y'all. So we'll just get straight into the questions. And I already see a comment from someone. But yeah, so as we go on, like I said, I already prepared some questions just to get the conversation started. But if you have any more, utilize the chat box. All right, y'all. So in regards to your job searching, what sites were most helpful for you?
For me, I would say that I did find out about this job via other people. They were working at the same position or like different like positions at Cleveland Clinic, and I didn't know that they offered something like this, where you don't have to go through like proper certification or training channels, and they train you at the job. And I was looking for something like that, especially after COVID. So I found out about other people. But for my past positions, I would say like I did utilize like universities on like research tool Handshake, and I found like very good positions there.
Thank you.
I think for me, it was mostly using very basic websites, job hunting websites like LinkedIn, Indeed. I did try looking for websites that specifically targeted, us international students, that, hey, here's this website that you can use, that this place, that this company offers a sponsorship, or they take students who are on F1 and OPT, because there are a lot of companies out there that take sponsorship, like they'll give you a sponsorship, but it's more like a long term, like you have to stay this much amount of time and only then you get a sponsorship. So for me, it was more like a hit and miss. So I started applying via ZipRecruiter, Indeed, and LinkedIn. But what I found to be most helpful was, when you're applying to these jobs, there's a space sometimes where you can either specify that you're an international student and you would require a sponsorship. Sometimes these applications don't let you do that, but they'll still give that space in making comments where is there something you want the person hiring to know something about you. So I always made sure that I put in that I am an international student who would require sponsorship, and I could be on OTP for so OPT. I just OPT for so long. So that way you don't have to go through an entire interview process only to find out later that, hey, you were good, but unfortunately we don't take international students. So for me, it was some basic websites like Indeed and LinkedIn. But they're pretty helpful because looking at those websites that will specifically target international students sometimes will not have the most amount of job postings, or sometimes people don't update it. So your only fallback becomes that I have to go for something that is the most popular, so like LinkedIn or Indeed. So for me, it was Indeed mostly.
Miss Blair.
So for me, I believe I began my job search in January of 2020, December of 2020, January of 2021, all up until like maybe March, April of 2021. And so a couple things helped me out in that process, specifically for job searching in higher education. The first was Kent State has a very great alumni network. And so, like, we have a listserv, and they're always sharing jobs through that. We have faculty members who always got connections, like, they have good knowledge on what universities typically take Kent State grads. And so there were a lot of job options in the Northeast Ohio area. The second was there's this job conference for higher ed graduates called the Placement Exchange, where you could sign up. It was like a 3-day job conference where you are interviewing with several universities. And that's basically how I got the job I have now. Um, Another one is Facebook groups. Those are very, very helpful. There's future student affairs grad students, there's student affairs professionals, there's Facebook groups for affinity spaces like international professionals, where they typically post jobs and universities that are hiring in specific functional areas. And I would say, in looking back, that was probably one of the most effective avenues to figuring out not only what universities are hiring, but being able to connect with current professionals to get their perspective on what the department is like, what the office is like, what is the university culture. And then there's like some more informal avenues like GroupMe, which is an app that's frequently used in higher ed. I'm in a lot of like different types of groups on that app with other professionals where they can constantly talk about their offices that are hiring. And so I had a lot of avenues to figure out where I could find the best job for me.
Thank you. I was gonna ask Nitya, I know you said there's an international or site that posts mainly international jobs. Do you remember any? Because I'm trying to think. Like, I don't know any site that
If I'm
specifically.
not wrong, there's this one website that actually starts. I don't know if it's called Hire Job or something like that, but I can definitely get back to you about the link. In fact, Kent State has posted the link in our, it's somewhere on the ISSS resources. But it's definitely that. Although I do think it's not the most updated or active, which is why my resort was to Indeed or LinkedIn. But there are definitely websites out there that target just international students, so we can find jobs more easily. And most of the time we're looking for that sponsorship, so we want to land a job that does that. And especially in my field, I couldn't find a lot of people who did the sponsorships. So I think having websites like these are very useful.
Yeah.
I would
No,
also
Nick.
add.
Sorry.
I'm sorry. Yeah. I'm sorry. I was just saying that I would also add that there's also this website called My Visa Jobs that I think is very useful in
Mhm.
finding which employers actually take international students and like how often do they do sponsorships, their H-1Bs, and like how often, like how many employees in a year have they like done H-1B like form
Mm-hmm.
for. Even sometimes it mentions green card, so it gives you like a good gist of like how international student friendly the employer is. So I would say
Yeah.
definitely like when you're looking for jobs, if you want to research more about the company, like look that up, like check that website out. I think it's very useful.
Yeah, I mean, Blair would also agree, but my visit jobs, man, it's my holy go-to. Like literally, once I find a company I want to work for, that's the
Yep.
first place I check.
Yep.
Mhm.
Because it gives you an idea if they've sponsored before, how many people they've
Yep.
sponsored, when was the last time. So it's a good. But I think similar to my visit jobs, is also I think it's called the H1B grader. But it's similar to my visa job. So it does the same thing. So it tells you if the company has sponsored before. So those two
Mm-hmm.
are really helpful.
Yep.
Okay, I think we can move on to our next question. I know someone just said, awesome. Another person said, thank you all for your time and insights. All right, y'all. So the next question I have is, what are some questions you were asked? Because everyone comes from a little bit of a different background, different fields. So what are some questions you were asked in your interview? Or I think maybe we could even start with what was the interview process? Because I would say for higher ed, for example, sometimes we have it's a three-phase process or
Mm-hmm.
two-phase. So could you kind of talk a little bit about the interview process and then some questions you were asked throughout that process, if that makes sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
I can start. So my basically my interview was a two-part like process. First, like I applied to the position, and then it did mention in the position that if they were like sponsor my H-1B or if they hire students on OPT. So straight like off the bat, like they did mention that. So which narrowed down my option that okay, if I can apply for this position or not. So the first part was actually a phone interview which I had with my HR, and they just asked me some basic questions about like which unit or which department I would mostly be interested in. So currently I work with the neurological clinical care unit. So that was actually one of my like top choices. I gave him three options: cardiology, neurology, and emergency. So at that time they were not hiring for emergency because of COVID, but he asked me all that, and then he asked me if I have past experience in the position, or if I have a state tested nursing assistance like certification or not, and what are my past experiences that will allow me to work better in this position. So I have been a past like I do have passed like EMT certification, so I just mentioned about that. And like he did also ask me if I would be able to work with a fast-paced environment or not, so that or if I'm more like a team player, if I like to work individually, so that it would allow him to like put me through the second part of the process in the correct department. So the second part of the interview was it was a shadowing experience where you actually go on the floor and you do stuff so that your nurse manager and at the same time your peers can actually see if you would how would you interact with the patient if you were put in this position, if you would actually step up and take the charge, take responsibility of doing some tasks. So that was my like second part, and I like think I did very good in that. It was definitely stressful because I have never worked in hospital, I would say. So going and actually interacting with the patient and telling them, hey, like I'm here for shadowing, but and I'm not an actual like PCNA. So is it okay if I do this? Sometimes they would say no, like you're not a skilled professional. I don't want you to do anything. But sometimes they would be very willing about it. So just like how to interact with the patients in the first place and how to like do certain tasks. So that was my like second part where you actually had to like do stuff hands on under like somebody's supervision, even though it was shadowing, but it was mostly like me doing like stuff with my other like peers. So yeah, that was how the interview process was for me. And they were very quick about like getting back to me about like if I got the position or not, which I did.
Blair, that's what we hope for higher ed. But I know before everyone goes ahead, I wanted to, because Nick just joined us, so I just wanted to give Nick an opportunity. Nick, we're going over the questions. So the first question was just, could you share a little bit more about yourself and what you do in your current role. And also, if possible, I know you can share a little bit about your journey to the United States. So after Nick answers this question, then we can go back into it. Nick, you have the floor.
All right. Apologies, everyone, for being so tardy. Hi, my name is Nick Moore. I'm a data scientist with a company called Trimble Transportation. It's a software company. Um, I graduated Kent in 2019. I got my master's in data science from there. And my journey has been, I would say, I've been pretty fortunate that things have fallen in line as any international student would hope for. It really started out with uh, trying to break into a new field. My bachelor's and my work experience was mainly based in software engineering, and I was trying to break into the data related field. So things related to data analytics, data science, AI, and so forth. So I was breaking into a whole different career, and because of that like lack of experience, I kind of was a little bit handicapped in how effective I will be compared to others who are in the same job market looking for those roles. So I took my luck, and I got my luck getting started in a data analytics intern position. And so once I had that position, and I liked the company, luckily enough, I was able to showcase to the employer how valuable I was. And as I did that, I progressed in my career. So got promoted like twice in the same company, and just working up the ranks. So that's really been my journey with my career wise. With the US, I moved here from Romania. I was studying. That's where I actually was working and studying, and I came out here to you know break into this new field because I saw it would be a really very good thing for me to do to progress my career. So moving into the US, I have family here, so that made it a little bit easier. However, thinking you're like I had like this European mentality, and coming to the US was completely different. But it didn't take too much of adjustment. Thankfully, I had Winnie, who who made it easier
I
for
don't know
me.
if I'll say all that.
Oh, no, she did contribute to making it easier for me. But yeah, sorry, that was a
Thank you.
long-winded one.
No, it's totally fine. Thank you. Okay, Nick. We'll go back to the question we're answering. So, Nick, we were just talking about like the interview process. So, for the job you currently have, or for jobs you've held in the past, what was the interview process, and what are some of the questions you got asked during that process? So, I know we still have Garvin had answered. We still have Nitya, Blair, and Nick as well.
I would say for me, it is a bit different. It was like, I thought it was very basic in terms of, every person that, you graduate from a university, and then, you have to go out there and look for a job. And for somebody who's looking for a job in an industry, irrespective whether it is biotech or IT or something, the process looks very similar. You go online, you submit your resume, you apply for the job, and it only differentiates when it comes down to which sector it is. For me, it was biotechnology. I did several interviews, which were from 30 minutes long to 6 hours long.
Oh, wow.
So, and I had some of them that was split into, they were 6 hours long, or 8 hours long, and they were split into like 2 to 3 days. So it was a pretty lengthy process. I say this because in biotechnology, it depends on what kind of company you are targeting, whether it's a small scale, whether it's a medium scale, whether it's a large scale. Then it would depend on what kind of position you are targeting, whether it's an entry level, whether it's a mid level, or whether you're going higher. For me, I can speak for entry level and mid level. The position that I currently work is a mid level position. The reason I can speak for both is during college, I was also doing an internship in Cleveland, which was an entry level position. And the interview process for an entry level position is pretty simple, especially when they know that, you're still studying, and you're going to be on your CPT at that point. And you could just, work for a couple of hours, or you could work as full-time student in a co-op. So the interview process becomes very simple. they will not interview for more than maybe an hour latest, because they know that at that point you're studying, you're coming with no experience, you're coming there to learn. But when you switch out of college, you are going from um, somebody who did not have a degree to somebody who has experience and a degree now. So they expect you to know a lot of things. Across all my interviews, I had to give a 45-minute long presentation on all the research that I had done. So, anything that I learned in my previous labs, what I did at my old internship, what was the research question that I was asking. Because as somebody who is in the field of research and wants to go further, they want to know how you are at thinking. So, like, what kind of solutions you come up with. And in every single interview, there were some questions which remain the same. You could give a 45-minute presentation and they're going to ask you the same 10 questions in all the next 8 interviews. So you've got to be prepared with, telling the same answers, but in different ways, depending on who you're interviewing with. Like in these long interviews, the company's goal is to sort of target that you get a chance to interact with the company, the people they're going to work with, the people who are going to be lower than you, the people who are going to be working in higher positions than you. So it is kind of a balance. So my initial interviews were one where you give phase 1, which is giving a presentation to, say, 10 people who are going to be interviewing you at some point. So you give a presentation to them. The next step is you would usually talk to a hiring manager about, they ask your experience, they have seen your presentation, so now they have questions. So you will have a 30-minute Q&A round with them where they question you about everything that is in your interview. And it depends on which company that you're applying for. Mostly small scale and large scale companies would basically interview on scrutinizing questions out about your research. Like, they'll go into the smallest detail that you might have missed in your own presentation. So I would say you gotta see, what company you're really interviewing for. And it's a two-way process. While when you're giving these 3-phase interviews, you are also interviewing the company back while they are interviewing you. So it has to be a good balance between, for me, it was a 70-30 that I like to keep. 70% where they ask me the questions because, at the end of the day, they are hiring me for a big task that they're going to be holding me responsible for. The 30% is where I talk to them about, how the team is, how is it going to be working under them, what is the manager like, if they have a particular style that they work in, talking to peers in the team. Your question should vary depending on who you're interviewing with. So my second phase after the hiring manager was a third phase, which is the 6-hour phase, where every 30 minutes you switch somebody you interview with. And sometimes it doesn't matter. You could be interviewing somebody that you're going to be working with at your level to somebody who is a director in the company, or, I interviewed with small scale companies with the CEO, with the chief scientific officer. On a large scale company, you would just probably end up interviewing at the highest level with the director of the department. So it would really matter. Even if they've seen that 45-minute presentation, you should mainly just know how to switch up your answers, yet keep it consistent in a way that you're not changing the facts, but you're just relaying it in a different way because of what positions they belong to. Like with your hiring manager, you would want to be, okay, I'm going to be working with this person, so I want to build that rapport. Whereas with the director, you are trying to show them that I'm capable of doing this, and what you want to put your leadership qualities out there. So for me, at the end of the day, after those 6-hour long interviews, it was pretty exhausting. But my main suggestion would be to ask the questions and also, keep a very calm mind about knowing that, whatever you're putting out there, it the best because they are also interviewing you. So you need to know your stuff well.
Thank you.
So I'll say, I've went through a lot of interview processes last year, as I approached graduation and trying to look for a full-time job and doing OPT for the first time. Higher education is very different in terms of their interview processes regarding who you may interview with. And that may be due to the size of the office, the positions folks in that office hold. And so I would say there's not necessarily a one-way approach of what to expect. Generally, interviews could be a 2-parter or 3-parter. The one I had for Iowa was a 2-parter that consisted of The first one was a screening to see generally what is your skill set, knowledge, and competence as it relates to the basic functions of the job. So, in my terms, it's looking at leadership and supervision, um, how I contribute to student development, and what do I know about student development and theories and whatnot. My experiences with programming and advising. And other like uh more so administrative pieces, going through what to expect in terms of the timeline, in terms of the onboarding process, the culture of the department, the makeup, life at the University of Iowa. The final round consisted of interviews with different folks in residence education, um, from the director and assistant VP or VP to my colleagues to potential supervisors. And that was a day long process, I would say. That being said, higher ed is not the most efficient when it comes to interviews. You are not going to go in that process and get like a 2 to 3 hour interview. You're for a final round. Um, Most of the final rounds I had were day long processes, interviewing with different positions, different folks who held different positions, asking various questions. So get prepared for that if you're going into higher education. Um, and so the questions I was asked as I went moved further into the final round, it asked about my philosophies as it related to, again, leadership and working with students. It asked about projects and programs that I planned, that I was proud of. It asked about my successes, areas of growth, strengths, how I would work collaboratively with colleagues and peers, how I work in a group setting. Um, those are the things to think about in the higher education realm, if you're pursuing an interview like that. In terms of like international related questions. One university asked me a question on if I would need sponsorship, which I was very caught off guard because, first of all, it wasn't even HR. It was the first interview, the first initial screening where they asked that, and that was just a part of their protocol. Um, and so I told them the truth of needing it. And they were like an internationally friendly sort of kind of institution. But I would say that is something that may show up in the process. Additionally, I think, I don't know if it was you, Anita, or Gavin, that made a point of like applications may have a section where you could say if you need
Yeah.
sponsorship.
Mhm.
Um, I would say most applications to the student affairs positions applied for asked that question, but I don't necessarily know if that information got routed to the hiring committee. And so, um, in the beginning, I initially thought that in entering these interview processes, when I would make that point on my application, like, okay, I marked yes, so they already know, so that automatically means that this institution is already in, or this office, let me say, is internationally friendly. That was not the case. You know what I'm saying? So just be prepared on when and how you are planning to bring up the fact that you are international. You will be on OPT and you will need sponsorship in the future, and not make that assumption of the hiring committee already knows that about you.
Thanks, Blair. Nick?
Yeah, there are so many great points made by everybody here. It's kind of making it difficult to actually shine here. But speaking personally, I started out with an internship, and like Nitya mentioned, entry level internships are the and the sort of like the interviews for those are one of the most easy kinds of interviews you will ever really
Mhm.
partake in, mainly because if you look at it from the employer's perspective, there is not a lot of risk for them to try you out for a couple of months, right? So it's the mostly so they don't need to vet you out thoroughly. Internships are kind of like this pro bono. You could think of them. You could think of like pro bono programs that law firms do, where they're trying to invite these prospective people to partake in their business and get some experience. They don't have to do it, right? But they want to. So for me, that was really the case. Even after talking to my manager who hired me for my internship afterwards, they're like, yeah, you had, there was not much risk for us to hire you. And you seem like a bright lad, I guess. So you did all right. So, I mean, that's what, so anybody that is going for an internship, don't get too nervous about all the questions they might ask you, because in the end, it's really low risk and it's not going to be too intense. You're not going to get a 6 hour um, interview. If you do, then they're trying to like abuse you like a donkey. So definitely run if that happens. But yeah, started with the internship, and basically, my interview and the internship was just like just one conversation with the hiring manager, and that was enough. I would say that if you are in that situation, you're applying for an entry level position, an internship, it is your absolute it's your absolute responsibility to make to put yourself in the best way possible by taking lead in the conversation. I would say that there are tons of people that would want would want that position, and so if you're in that position, if you're not interviewing someone, you got the chance to interview. It's your responsibility to try and put yourself in the best light possible. I would say that as an entry level person, I would switch Nitya's advice of a 70-30, where 70% of the conversation should be you asking questions and 30% should be them. Again, they don't have to invest, they don't have to vet you so much. It's usually 3 months, and that's fine. And it's not gonna paying you like, six-figure salaries or anything, right? They're gonna be paid usually hourly. So it's your responsibility to ask 70%, like 70% of the time is you asking questions, leading the conversations, talking about the things that you've done, things that you did in your previous work experience or in your school, telling them that you know your stuff. I would That's my best advice if you ever in that position, because that's what's going to set you apart from all the numerous people that are applying for that for that role, for that entry level role. But after you've gotten that, you got your internship. Now you're applying for a mid level or a senior level. Yes, this is where I think you just have to mentally prepare yourself for the stamina like you mentioned you need, because like others here, it's true. You are going to encounter numerous meetings that vary in length and vary in the number of people. Sometimes you're not even going to get a break. Um, so you have to just prepare yourself mentally for that. And I think Nietzsche said it best: keep your answers consistent, but change it up depending on who you're talking to. That's great advice. Um, for I would say that one way to help yourself while answering these questions is to adopt this strategy that came up in Amazon called the STAR method, which is like situation, task, action, results. With whatever question they give you, try and structure it where this was a situation where this problem happened. This was a task I had to do. This is the actions I took, and these are the results. That's a good framework to use to help yourself when answering questions. Because if you're not a good conversationalist, you maybe are shy or you're not really used to talking to people, then this is like a nice way to just have you not, um, you know, talk too much and just blabber. right? You have something structured that tells you when to start and when to stop. So that would be my advice when interviewing. I think the panel has said and given a lot of other information that was very good.
Thanks, y'all. So the next question is, what are some of the biggest challenges that you would say you face while job searching? I think the pandemic could be a challenge. I don't know if that was a challenge.
Yes, that was definitely a challenge for me because I when the pandemic like started, my initial plan was to during that summer I took the EMT training via Kent State's classes that were offered. It wasn't covered in tuition. I was like, okay, I'll work as an EMT to get my patient care hours for my master's program. I'll be on the track and everything. And the pandemic hit, and they stopped all shadowing experiences for me. Like, it's mostly like because I'm in healthcare, so I need shadowing hours, patient care hours, just to get into like higher upper level master's program. Otherwise your application will not be considered, and it's not considered a strong application, which actually does make sense. Like, you need, if you're going into upper level healthcare, you need to know how to start at the bottom and like how to talk to patients, care for them, and then only you'll be a better like doctor, PA, nurse practitioner, whatever field you choose to go to. So my plan was to work as an EMT throughout the summer and get my hours, and then next year during my senior year I would apply. But because of the pandemic, they stopped all these jobs and I couldn't start as an EMT. And like next year when I tried to, I was in India because of some family situation. My plan, I was like, I'm gonna come back this summer and I will do it when the pandemic stopped. But then I got stuck back in India because of the pandemic and the flights were stopped. So for me, pandemic was a very, very big like halt, or like, you know, a rock that I had to like, I was like, okay, this is too difficult. I have to take a gap year now because I need to get those hours. So I would definitely say like pandemic did disrupt my like job search process. And even like when I was like able to start, like I would say my certification, it got expired. I literally expired like last month as an EMT. So it was very challenging. And then even then after that, in healthcare, you do need to have a like certain certifications in order to be in order to like have a job, or like do entry level like nurse's aid, or to be an EMT. Like, you need to have some kind of like certifications, and to get that certification, like, you know, you have to apply, you have to like spend money. And I, coming from, you know, I'm an international student, I don't earn that much and I don't want to ask money from my parents. So definitely the EMT class like helped me because it was offered by Kent State, covered in tuition. So that was also one of the challenges. But with this position at Cleveland Clinic, they were going to train me at the job, so I didn't need to have a past certification from, like, you know, any government agency or anything. So this did definitely help me. But if you're in healthcare and if you need some kind of hours, or if you need to have those experiences, like, you do need to have some certification prior, which usually takes like months. So like my EMT training, for example, was like 5 months long. So, and even in that, they have a lot of like requirements that you have to fulfill, other than just like studying in class. You have to go through a lot of hands-on competency like tests. You have to go through like a lot of on paper like tests, skills tests, and you have to do shadowing. You have to do shadowing in hospital and out of hospital. So there's a lot that goes on into all of this. So those all like were my like personal challenges with this.
Thank you. Thanks, Kirby.
You want to go ahead, Nick, first?
Oh no. No, COVID was something else. Yeah. Go ahead, finish what you were going to say.
No, mine was actually the pandemic as well. But it actually relates to one of the questions that we have in the chat, experience. So for very, very much research related, yes, experience was the major challenge that I had. In senior year and in your junior year in the program that I was in, you're supposed to have a lot of lab time, which is supposed to be a part of, okay, this is the experience that I got from school. and this is something that I'm going to be applying at my internship. And then you take that experience and then you go to a job and you tell them, okay, this is my combined experience from that internship and the schoolwork. So I think I have a good head start. But in my case, even after joining several labs, I was never in the lab because it was not allowed. You had to submit several applications to even qualify to step foot in the lab, which never happened for me. So I took this as an opportunity to use reverse psychology on some companies. I wouldn't call it, let's just say, good manipulation. Okay. So it was more in the spirit that, listen, I haven't had the opportunity to work in the lab for a very long time, and this is when I was applying for my internship. So the interviews are not very long. They want you to make that impression in the first 30 minutes when you're talking to them. So I used the pandemic and no experience as a leverage that, listen, I did not have the experience because the pandemic happened, but here you have a chance to train somebody. So because you could be that person, you could be that company that gets me where I want to be. So I would say, sometimes you just have to use the situation as a leverage. So after my questions were done, I've worked in this lab, it was mostly theoretical, but if put in that situation, I would want to learn how to do it practically. So, and for me, it was more like, it looks like your company has a lab space to do that. They have that space and resources to train me. And your company work is something that I'm interested in long term. So while I bring a lot of theoretical knowledge, I want this company to be the one that gets me to where I want to be. So you basically use your situation as a leverage to get what you want. And for the company, it's more like, oh, we're going to be training another bright individual, right? So for them, it's like, okay, two opportunities. I was, in a nearby university with the company that I was interning with. So for them, it's more like, okay, we are getting a student from this university, meaning we can build good relations with this university and, in future, have more graduates come work for us. Or for an internship, it's for a small company that looks really nice that they are taking students from different schools and training them, because this internship, if it goes well, you as a student would want to advertise it to your peers, to your juniors, to tell them that hey, this company helped me get where I am even in the pandemic, so go work for them, go apply for it. So that way the company gets exposure, and you make sure that you put that in your interview. You in some way you incorporate it in your answers. Tell them that I'm coming from this school, I worked in this lab, this professor has taught me so much. And then you kind of pull the pieces together to let them know that, make them think that their company is basically doing you a favor. So in my situation, I sort of had to turn that around to make them think that they'd be giving me the experience that I need to climb up the ladder, which they did technically. But to get there with somebody with literally zero experience, haven't stepped foot in the lab for a year and a half, it's difficult for a company to hire you, right?
Yeah.
And so I ended up getting a full paid internship with them. So you just have to leverage your situation.
Thank you.
That's absolutely beautiful. Like,
Nick,
perfect.
you want to say? Sorry, go ahead, Nick.
I was just going to say that was completely amazing what she did, because as someone trying to get into a field that you have no experience, this is what you have to do. This goes back to like the 70% you, making them realize that you're worth it and they'll be lucky to have you, right? That's what you have to do. And for me personally, luckily, I graduated before the pandemic, so sorry, can't relate with today. But I did actually get impacted by the pandemic, because while in my full-time role, I wanted to progress my career within the same company. And I saw a role, which is the role I currently have now, that was available. But pandemic started and that role was killed. So all the preparation interviews went nowhere. So as a result of that, I had to wait like a whole another year before I was able to reapply again. But reason why I mentioned that is because there are two things. First is that as an international student, I think you have to realize that you're going to be asked to adapt and change and find different ways to get to where you need to go, because in the end you're in another country, There is no you don't have many privileges in that country. You have to make what you have to use what has been given to you and make the most of it. It's not going to be easy. It's not click in the park. It's hard, but that's what it means to be an international student. All international students go through these crazy obstacles and challenges. The amount of things that international has to the obstacles and hoops international have to jump through before the native students don't have to go through that many. But in the end, we go after we go through that, we come out stronger and much more resilient. That's like one of the first points I'm going to make. So if you're going to be an international student, just realize that if you don't like change, then don't be an international student. You have to adapt change, embrace change, and make the most of it. And the second of all, second point is just building on top of what Nithya said. If you don't have any experience, it was amazing how she was able to convince them of, hey, I don't have much experience, but this is your opportunity to train you and see how I can help you. I'm good for it. I am an amazing candidate. You'd be lucky to have me. If you give me a chance, you're going to love me. And that's what you have to say. And for myself, I have been in that position, but I've also interviewed people because in my position, I interview people who don't have a lot of experience. And the number one thing I see that makes a difference in whether I personally consider them for a role in which is usually in tech is if they're an entry level, they don't have much experience. What projects have they done? What activities have they done that is not maybe completely that is not like official in the sense that an employer gave it to them or it was from school? Do you have extracurricular activities or projects that relate to this job in some other way? Again, if you have no experience, what the one word that can be assigned to you is, do you have potential? Because that's what employers are trying to assess: potential. Do you have the potential to be great in this role? And the best way to show that is to sell yourself that yes, I am great, but not only that, to back it up with projects, passion, things that you've done outside of school or whatever, to show that yes, I have done things like this. I'm very interested to learn and I can adapt. That's what they want to see. So if you don't have any experience, make up for it by selling yourself, by the projects you do of outside of school or whatever, and show that you have potential.
Oh, Nick should be a preacher. But no, I just wanted to add to that. Yes, preacher, we see you. But man, like that is such a good point. I think a lot of times as international students, we're like, I came here for my studies. I have to focus on my studies. But if you want to stay in this country and get a job, like I think your extracurricular activities matters. I just also want to give credit to like Nitya and Gurveen because man, they were in like 10 different groups. Like y'all were doing so much at Kent State. So extracurricular really truly does matter. So you should take really importantly. Okay, y'all. So we have a bunch of questions. So the first question we have is from Shore. So I don't know. Can you guys see the question on the screen?
Yeah.
Okay, but I'll still read it. But it says, my question would be, what resources did you use to find your positions that you were interested in? Did you find your dream position or did you settle? Oh, sure. Okay. That's a tough one. All right.
So I'll answer this one.
Okay.
I feel like in the beginning, when I started my job search, I thought that there was like a thing called a dream position. I think that in this phase of my life where I transitioned from my master's program to an entry level staff position in higher education, I wouldn't call it necessarily a dream position because I don't necessarily envision myself being in this spot for a very long time. Iowa is also very different. Initially, when I started my job search, I wanted to be in a location where I had representation, where there was a lot of resources, where I could connect easily with other Caribbean people, But given that I am international, I had to be more strategic and be more open to where I was going to be. And let me make a point and say that Florida, y'all, is not the most internationally friendly when it comes to entry level staff positions in higher education. Other fields may say otherwise, but for that specific area, not internationally friendly. Um, in terms of resources, I think this process really requires having a community of support. That means you are connected with people who have gone through it, who know what to look for. They have gone through the job search, they know what questions to ask, they know which universities are internationally friendly and are not. They know the answers to any of the immigration hurdles that may show up, because I went through it regarding OPT and it was not fun. And so I will say, while you are in your graduate undergrad program, make sure you are intentional about connecting with other international students and professionals who understand your experience. Because while a lot of institutions have like career offices and this office and that office, that doesn't necessarily mean that they are the most knowledgeable about the international student experience.
Mhm.
Um, and so make sure like figure out who knows what you need to have. In terms of other resources, I think that goes back to the earlier question of like where to look for specific jobs. There are many formal as well as informal networks. And so I'll say that while you have like for higher education specifically, specific websites tailored to posting higher ed and student affairs jobs, highered.com, the chronicles of highered.com, and other like diversity higher education.net or something like that. um Make sure that you have the informal networks to support that, so you are able to actually connect with folks who work in those spaces, so you have a good idea of the culture of that space. Because I think in my experience, a lot of folks would say, oh, like sometimes you have to settle for positions in these weird areas, if you want to if you want to get that sponsorship. Um but in addition to that, you have to think of sense of belonging. You have to think of support. You have to think of, can I go to the grocery store down the street and find foods that I grew up with? Like, as simple as that. So, I will say for me, I'm still looking for what that dream job looks like. I think I am okay and I am happy with where I am now. But it's also important for me to have like these little communities and spaces of support needed within my time here, which through the action steps that I took in understanding what the University of Iowa is and the people that work here, I do have that. So that's what the resources looks like in my experience.
Thanks, Blair. Okay, y'all. Did anyone else want to chime on that? We still have a ton of other questions as well. No?
I
Okay.
think she
So
said it
just
well.
sorry, go ahead, Nick.
No, I just said I think Blair said it very well.
Okay. I think Blair, this question is for you or myself as well, since we're both in higher education. But the person says, I'm interested in higher education. Seems like I would love to attend Kent. I want to ask, what activities should I engage in during my days in graduate school? And then it also continues, um, so what activities to better position me and give me the experience needed to secure a job?
Yeah, so specifically for higher ed, um I think that goes back to the earlier point of what Nick was saying, like projects and extracurriculars. So for me, I did feel well equipped to pursue my job search in the positions I was applying for, because I did practicum internships in various functional areas around campus. So the international office, like the multicultural affairs office, upward bound, trio services, all unpaid, mind you. But at the end of the day, like on the resume, like I had projects that I could talk to, people I connected with, supervision, leadership experiences that I could speak to, and it looked like full-time professional experiences. So I would say be strategic about what kind of internships you want to do and how that will contribute to your full-time job. Um, think about what you want to do in the summer, like in terms of internships, which are more likely to be paid.
Mhm.
Think about research if you want to engage in like a capstone project or thesis, if that's going to be part of your program or not. And if not, how can you incorporate that into the work that you do? Think about making a graduate assistantship, right?
Mhm.
A part-time job on campus. That also contributed to my resume and my ability to better find a job after um, graduation. These are all activities that you can engage in that will very much help you in your job search
Mhm.
approaching graduation.
Thanks, Blair. All right, the next question says, what's the difference between OPT and sponsorship? Also, are international students on F1 visa while doing OPT? Anyone want to tackle that?
Um, I'll go ahead. So OPT is basically the period after you graduate. You want to work in the United States. So it's optional practical training. And while you get your OPT after you graduate, yes, you would remain on your F1 visa. Sponsorship is when your employer says that they will put in an application for H1B visa for you. Like an H1B visa has to be sponsored by the employer. So, which is why it's called a sponsorship. So if they put that application for you, likely whenever the next lottery picking happens, if your name comes in it, that is when your H1B process starts. So if your name is picked, you submit a couple of documents. So you are on the H1B visa till your stamping and all the other documents are processed back in the US and in your home country. So that is when you're officially on an H1B visa, which has a different validity date compared to your OPT. And OPT would usually vary for students in STEM versus students who are not a part of the STEM group. OPT, you would be on an F1 visa for a year if you're not in STEM. But if you are in STEM, then you get 3 years. So 1 year you would have your normal, just OPT, F1 visa, and then you can apply for a STEM extension, which is 2 more years on that 1 year. So it's really a 1+2. So that way you can work for 3 years on your OPT with an F1 visa, where your employer has the time to submit a sponsorship H1B visa application for you. So it really gives you like 3 times. 3 times you can be, your name can be picked in the H1B lottery if your employer ends up applying for your H1B sponsorship.
Thank you. I also didn't want to. I wanted to add, like, for the Nitya explained the science people. That's what I call y'all. There's the second side of H1Bs for the non-STEM people. So typically, if companies are CAP exempt, so a lot of the CAP exempt are like nonprofit organizations, universities. So if you're like University of Iowa, if you're working at a nonprofit, a lot of them are nonprofit. So you would be CAP exempt. So with that H1B process, they can literally apply for you anytime. They don't have to wait for the lottery. They can just apply for you whenever, and they can also pay like a premium fee to speed up the process as well. So that's the two different H1B process. All right, y'all. The next
I
question
would want to.
sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to add some important bits into that conversation because I had to deal with this recently.
Mhm.
Um, when you're on OPT, so as they've already said, you can be on it's called STEM OPT, and you just called OPT. So if you're an OPT, as she said, 1 year. If you're on STEM OPT, then you have 3 years because your education in the US was classified under a STEM degree. One important thing to note, nursing is not under STEM. So
Wow.
that's very unfortunate, but that's the situation. If you did nursing in the US, you're not guaranteed to have STEM, so you don't get the opportunity of working 3 years. But Nitya's points, if you are lucky, you did a STEM course, you have to make sure that if you really want to benefit from that, make sure that your degree, your master's degree or your bachelor's degree, falls under that STEM category. The
Yes.
Office of Global Education or whatever office deals with foreign students can help you answer that. So that's the first thing. And Nitya's point, she gave you a really, really interesting tip. If you're on STEM, you can continuously apply for your H1B like each year because it is like a lottery system that goes on each year. So definitely leverage that. Another tip to add is that if you did a master's degree in a highly skilled like area like software engineering or biochemical or biomedical, you could actually apply not for the regular lottery. So how it goes is that there's like I think so there are like 100 lotteries. 20 of them are reserved for people with like master's degree in like software engineering or data science or biomedical. So that's like the I forgot the term for it, but that's like the cap exempt. That's like the cap exempt tier, and then there's a regular tier where everybody goes. So that's where you could find nursing students. That's where you could find uh, some other um, careers in there. But if you did a master's, make sure you stress to the employer and the lawyers handling your case they should put you in that like higher preferred tier, uh, which is like which is reserved for people that did a master's in those STEM degrees. That way, even if you don't get picked in that smaller lottery, you can still get picked in the larger one, and those gives you like more chances. So that's another tip over there.
Thank you. All right, y'all. So the next question is how important, I'm guessing they're saying how important is cover letters or how important are cover letters? And did you also network for the process?
I'm gonna just add here, cover letters, at least in the tech world, are not that important. If you're trying to apply for machine learning, data science, software engineering, web development, cover letters are not that important. Recruiters see billions or not, sorry, that's exaggeration, thousands of resumes, and they don't always make time to like look at your cover letter, especially if you've done a good enough job to present your resume and it matches with the role. They won't really care too much about your cover letter. So I won't stress too much, at least if you're doing tech. And in regards to networking, yes. Um, I learned something from a recruiter that handled my case at my current company. She told me that after college, she never had to actually apply for a job with a resume. Why? Because she networked, and where she is right now at Trimble is through network. So here's the a very like sad truth about resumes is that number one, humans are not always reviewing it. Your resume will most likely be dropped from a company's job portal system via automated like bots that parse through your resume, figure out if you have certain keywords, and if you don't, they drop you. So that's one sad thing. Another thing is that resumes unfortunately enter into a black hole. You never really know if somebody looked at your resume or not. So it's something that you just have to do as part of the job process. You have to submit your resume. It's like a shotgun. You have to just see what sticks. But it's really best if you could identify if you be more specific about what you want, meaning you know the company you want to work for, you know what roles you're trying to apply for. Maybe go on LinkedIn, just find a recruiter that works there, ask them, "Hi, How are you? What can I do to better put myself in a situation to apply for this job? Usually, recruiters are trying to find people because it's hard out there for them. It's like it's not easy for these recruiters to find people. So if you make it easier for yourself, say, "Hey, I'm going to make it easy for you. This is me. This is my resume. How can I be a better candidate?" They will love. They will actually try to help you out. So yes, networking through like LinkedIn or job fairs,
Mhm.
those, that's all right. Those are what we do.
I would like to add a point to just like Nick's point. They do filter your resumes if if you have ever submitted an application via Workday, like which what most companies would use. They're definitely using that system where your resume is just going through a filter system. What I like to do is if an application is submitted via Workday, which most of the times, most of my applications were submitted via Workday. I look at the job descriptions. Those are usually the keywords that they're looking for. So those are the keywords that are going to be in the system as well. So I try to tailor my resume according to the company's job description. I try to, it's going to say the same thing if you're applying for a job with the experience that matches the job description. So I just changed a couple of words in my resume and I'll, switch them out. They're mostly synonyms. Like, 90% of the time they're going to be synonyms. So I switch out the words to, what it tailors to the job description. So that when they are checking off the boxes, oh, they have this, oh, they have this. That way, my resume is getting checked off alongside those boxes. And networking, I have submitted, I don't know, in my 75 job applications, maybe 4 cover letters. In research fields, sometimes they're looked at, but then if they look at your cover letter, what are the 6-hour long interviews for, right? I mean, you're trying to put yourself out there. You're trying to explain the same thing. Sometimes it is good that you submit a cover letter for them and it's just going to be like, oh, they made that tiny bit extra effort. That, okay, you typed something up because you would really want to work there and you submitted it. And now there's a checkbox. Okay, they did this. So for me, it wasn't much of a leverage. The job that I am in right now is via a recruiter. She approached to me on LinkedIn. I changed my LinkedIn settings to open to work, looking to work in this field. I made a couple of connections in the companies that I wanted to work with and did something called as informational interviews so that they were aware that, okay, I might potentially apply to their company. My name might appear in the people to, interview for. And they were already aware. So they knew that I was interested. They knew that which position I was interested in because, the kind of people that I was having an informational interview with. And I specified it to my recruiter that I have done a couple of informational interview with these people and, this is the department I'm looking to work in. And she was like, that's amazing because fortunately she turns out to be that she was working for the department. So for me, it was like a good connect. I knew the people. I had already done some informational interviews with them. And my recruiter put out like the details that I wanted the hiring manager to know. I specifically asked my recruiter to highlight some of the details. Sometimes you can do that by, bolding out things on your resume, that something that you really want to draw their attention to, just bold out that statement that you need to look at this. So I asked my recruiter to do that for me. Like when you give them my presentation, when you pitch the hiring manager about me, just let them know that these are the things that I really want them to know. And sometimes you tend to, miss out on points. Like you are submitting your resume now, but you never know when the hiring manager is going to look at it. Say it's 2 weeks from now and you learned a new skill in that point. Contact your recruiter, let them know, hey, I learned this, but it's not on my resume. Could you mention that to the hiring manager? Or tell them that, I'm learning this. Could you please mention that to the hiring manager? It really matters how you talk to your recruiter as well, because the recruiter is basically your connection to the hiring manager. And at every point in life, you are pitching yourself, right? And for me, at one point it was I took up a campus sales job so that I learned how to pitch better. And for me, even if you do that for like a couple of months, you pick up some really good sales tricks. And because at every point in your life when you're trying to prove yourself, you're sometimes pitching yourself and you need to know how to negotiate, how to deal with it. So I think that really adds on, especially if you're working in a university, like a side part-time job. Pick up a sales job for like 2-3 months. It really helps.
Oh, goodness. Yeah, you just made some good points. Someone actually asked a question regarding about pitching yourself, but let's see. I'm trying to go in a roll all the questions. So I think this one's directed to Gervin. So it says, any suggestions on getting a license especially when your major doesn't include trainings credit and stuff?
So first, like as I said, like in healthcare, you need some kind of certification, some kind of license before you actually do even like a basic level job. Sometimes they train you on the job, sometimes they don't. So, but most of the jobs they prefer if you have a certification or a license. Um, that for that position. So first I would say just look through what's like certifications there are. So for example, there are EMTs, there are clinical techs, phlebotomists, state tested nursing assistants, PCNAs, nurses aid. Like there's a lot of patient care experiences that you can get, but first you need to pick which one you are interested in, like which one you want to, because EMT, it is very fast paced, it is out of hospital, whereas if you go into phlebotomist, it's not fast paced, it's basically drawing blood. But as compared to nurses aid, it can get fast paced depending on like this the department you're in. So I'm in the neurological department, and it gets from like 0 to 100 like just like this, like it gets crazy just like that. Even though I'm still like on the floor, I'm still orienting, I've still seen so many crazy situations. I've seen emergency AMET situations, like 3 or 4 of them just in my like 3 weeks. So personally I would say like pick that, which like pace you like, which department you like, because that's actually what healthcare is about, figuring out which department you like, and if you will be able to like work with the patients in that department, because everybody is different, everybody um comes from a different background. Like you need to find out which one you're interested in. And then for how to get Kent State has this EMT training. I can speak for that because I took that training. um it's the athletic EMT training. And I highly recommend that for some to anybody who wants to get a certification, because first it is a credit hour like class that you actually take. It's a 5 credit hour course. But and you don't have to pay anything for it on top of your tuition. So if you're at 12 credit hours, and if you like just take those 5 hours, you wouldn't be paying anything extra. So you don't have to pay anything out of pocket, it's covered in the tuition. Second, it gives you the entire certification, like the actual certification from National Registry of EMTs. You're certified in the state of Ohio to practice legally. And it also gives you CPR certification via American Heart Association, which is the most which is the accepted certification from the all over United States. There's 2, American Heart, and then there's I think Red Cross, but American Heart is accepted like all throughout the United States. So if you have that, that's very like good to have, and you don't have to pay anything for that. That's also included in the training. They train you, they take your skills test for the state, they take your actual like to prepare you for the written test that you have to take. And at the end of it, if you pass the written test, you are certified. So I highly recommend looking into that. And other than that, so Cleveland Clinic has these positions, patient care nursing assistant, which I found out about via like somebody else, where you don't need to have a license or a certification, and they train you at the job, but you still are like allowed to perform a lot of tasks um, that a nurse, not a nurse actually, but like a lot of tasks that you can perform. Like some of them are like related to Foley catheters, IVs. You can take out all of those, and like direct patient care hours. So definitely look into that, I would say. I know like your major does not include those trainings or like those classes, but if you are a Kent State student, then definitely look into the EMT training. And then if you don't, if you think that you're not a good fit for EMT, there's an in-hospital experience at Cleveland Clinic, and you can do your PCNA a job at any like unit, any department, whether it's cardiology, endocrinology, any like I would say like any of them. Um, and yeah, that's all I had, I think. Yeah.
Thank you. I think this one's probably for Nitya since you talked about, but they asked like, I think, what stuff, maybe what questions can we ask you in informational interviews? I think that's the question.
Yeah, sure. So There are a lot of online articles that will tell you the basic questions that you can ask somebody in an informational interview. But say starting from scratch, if you don't know what you're looking for, you can just open the companies that say you like, or you would potentially want to work for. You open that page, you go to you see the people that work there, you find a department that you might potentially be interested in. You find people that you might potentially want to talk to or work with, and you open up their LinkedIn profile, you see what they do. Okay, so that gives you a good idea of who they are, what they do, what their job is, even if they don't have anything in their LinkedIn profile that states, this is their job, but you now know their title. So you can do a basic research on, what people, particularly in these specific positions, what is their job. And once you read about them, you'll start forming these questions like, if this is a new person, I know they do this, but I want to know more. That is basically what an informational interview is. You want to know what they do in their day-to-day work life. You want to know that, say it's a 9 to 5, like what does your 9 to 5 look like? What is specific to this task, how do you perform this? And and all your questions are going to be, if I come to work here, how is it going to be? Like what is the work that you do? For me, it was say I'm targeting an associate scientist position. So I want to know what your day looks like. Like, you come in, are you just, attending meetings, planning experiments? How is that going on? Like, if you're planning experiments, what are the parameters that you're keeping in mind? And people that work in a company, don't worry about confidentiality. They already know that they have to filter the information that they're giving you. So be prepared for that, because sometimes in an informational interview, you can get carried away asking them questions, but they're bound to the confidentiality. So they might not be able to tell you everything, but they might be able to tell you that this is what they do on the day-to-day basis. Some questions that I asked in my informational interviews were, one, what is like their meeting schedule like? What kind of meetings are they allowed to attend? Is it just like group meetings? Is it going to be company-wide meetings? If it's a smaller company, it's usually like everybody meets together, and then you are like a team of 3 people who will meet and discuss, okay, this is the plan for the week. But if it's a bigger company, you might have a department meeting, you might have a team meeting, you might have a company-wide meeting, and that is scheduled every single week. So you have to be there at all the meetings. What this does, it gives you an idea that if I were to join this company, this is how my hours would be divided. This is how much time I would be spending in meetings. This is how much time I would be spending in lab. And this is the kind of work that I would be doing. Second question I usually ask is, you can ask about their research. A lot of this information is already on their website. And, this is not pertaining to, this one question is just like not pertaining to research. A lot of the information, the company that you're going to work for is on the website. So if you read through those, you will come up with some questions that, okay, what does this mean? What does the company mean when they say that they're going to be doing this, or this is their plan? Sometimes they put a lot of, reports, yearly reports, quarterly reports on there. I like to go through those just to see, how the company is doing and if that company is going to be a good fit for me. So this is a place where you can ask, how do you see the company growth? Is it exponential? Is it going to be good? Most of the time, employers are just going to be like, yeah, it's pretty good. It's, going really well. But sometimes, how they respond to you, you can really identify, if they really like working at the company or they don't. You can ask about questions like, what about the work culture at that company makes them want to stay? And so, questions like these would really help you understand what the company culture is like as well. And, it might seem like these are the questions that you can also ask in an interview. But, this is a before applying process. Like, I want to get a better idea if Biogen or say Regeneron, if they're a good fit for me. Like, those if they're my top companies, which company should I be preferring more? Like, if I were to interview with this company, what should I keep in mind? And people are usually aware of what informational interviews might be when you approach them, especially if somebody approach like a associate scientist, scientist 1, principal scientist. They're usually aware, and they usually talk about this on a daily basis, because companies do this within companies. If I am from a different department and I want to talk to somebody from another department, the company usually encourages their employees to go do an informational interview with that other employee. So they're usually aware. Then you kind of ask them this stuff, like, tell me what you do. And for me, my informational interviews usually used to last about 20 minutes, where I used to talk to them, just get a good understanding of what they do. And as somebody who's already in research, I knew some of the methods and techniques that I used. So I used to question them about, do you use this? Do you use this? Is this something that I should prepare myself for? Especially when you're studying in undergrad, right? You have that opportunity to go in the lab. You have that opportunity to talk to your mentor about, I want to learn this because I did an informational interview and it seems like this is going to be a useful skill for me to have when I finally get that interview. I want to talk about this, that I learned this. So your informational interviews are something that you might want to do before you start the whole job application process, so it can be more refined. Don't put in 75 applications like me. It is a lot of work. It's more like you want to refine your process down. You want to refine your applications. You want to have your safety net applications. You want to have your sure shot applications. And information interviews really help you do that. So
Thank you. Go ahead.
Yeah, for just to add on that, I don't know how many people here are from healthcare or like healthcare, like pre-health majors. An informational interview in healthcare will literally just be shadowing the person. So say if you want to be a doctor, an MD, go shadow the doctor that you are interested in, the department you're interested in. So if you're interested in orthopedics, go shadow an orthopedic doctor like who works in that department. Go shadow a physician assistant, because that will be the closest you will get to see what they actually do and how their day looks and what exactly includes. It's not all just about, going room to room looking at patients. A lot of it is just like charting on the patients, coming up strategies on like, okay, what are the next steps, working. And the doctor is not just working by himself or herself. They're also working with PT, OT, like they're working with PAs, nurses aid. Like I had so many PAs come and talk to me that, okay, can you do this for this patient? I think they need this. Okay. And while like they're talking about patient with their like discharge plan, or if they're talking to the patient, their next steps, they want you to be there. Like they want you to, like the other people that are involved in the care for the patient, they are there. It's not just the doctor like doing all the things by himself. It's a team. So I would say definitely go and shadow um someone in that field, the field that you're interested in, and that will give you a good gist of what exactly they do. Sometimes you might like, okay, maybe I don't want to be a doctor, maybe I want to be a physical therapist, or if I want to go a different route, I want to work in the hospital but not as a healthcare professional because I really like what they do. So that will definitely give you a lot of insight and on how their day looks like and what exactly they do. So for somebody in healthcare, like I like just go and shadow. I know like one of my shadowing experiences, I did see like the people were like performing CPR on somebody, which was not a very cool situation for the patient, but for me it was something I was seeing for the very first time. And it's so much different than what you are trained on and what you look at in the books. Like it looks so much different than like how they teach you. So go and like shadow or like reach out to PAs or doctors or anybody in that field and see if they're open to that. And a lot of times like they are very open. They really like if people come and shadow them. They really like teaching. So just go and like talk to like people. And that's how you can also network and like maybe land up a job in that hospital or like that setting.
Thank you. Okay, y'all. I feel like we've talked a lot about the process, what you should do. Now let's talk about pay. So one of the questions that I got on my Instagram was, how do I know what to write for the expected salary when asked in the application process? Because I know, like, even speaking from my experience, I have never, it's terrible, y'all, but I have never negotiated my pay. Whenever they tell me a certain, I'm like, okay. And I think that just comes for me. I feel like it comes from being an international student. Once I find out like a company is willing to sponsor, I'm like, okay, let's do it, So I guess, what do you guys like? Have you guys negotiated your pay before? And what do you write in when asked about an expected salary?
So I'll say that I felt the same way, Winnie, in terms of like, shoot, you sponsoring, like let's get it. I will say how I approach this is doing research on peer institutions for the specific position you are applying for. First, get a sense of what does the pay look like for that position in general across institutions. And obviously, I'm speaking in terms of higher ed and the position I have now. Um, what the position generally looks like. And I think for me, I got an idea of that as I worked through the program and as I was supervised by folks who were in the position that I was going to eventually apply to. I got a sense of what that number looks like. Once you look at peer and aspirational institutions in the field, you get a sense of like what is the range of the pay, that what is it supposed to be, what is the lowest level, what is the max. And so when you're putting something down on your application, uh, first look at what is the pay they're offering initially, and what is appropriate to what is the highest amount that is appropriate. um because some institutions, if they see you asking for a lot, they won't even entertain that conversation. Not saying that's right, but that's the attitude that a lot of offices in higher ed have today. Also don't lowball yourself. Higher ed is also a field that doesn't pay very well. And so just make sure you are understanding also the cost of living in that area as well, and what it'll take for you to get your basic necessities met. And then my last factor here is the prevailing wage. So when it comes to sponsorship, departments and offices have to meet a certain salary requirement in order for them to sponsor you. And so you could do your research on what that'll look like. And oftentimes, from my understanding, uh, USCIS Immigration Services would look at peer institutions in the area and see what the pay is looking like there and do a price based off of that. So that's why it's important to do your research, and choose a pay that will definitely help you to get by in life. So those are the factors I'd say consider when considering what kind of pay you should put down in an application.
Thanks, Blair. Anyone else?
I can chime in.
Okay.
For me, it was somewhere between an entry level and mid level position. So sometimes the application will actually give an option that what salary range that you're looking for rather than an exact number. So then it came to range. I used to consider a wide range, not like 20,000 different wide, but I usually went in the figure of 10,000s. Like usually you want to be close to what is being advertised. If it's not being advertised, use websites like Glassdoor to see what the median pay is. For me, I personally did a research on what a position like mine, irrespective of whatever company, how much does this position make? And then you do a little deeper research on how much does this company pay for this position usually. And when it comes to deciding, okay, but how much am I worth? Like, what is the effort that I'm going to be putting in? Is that worth this pay? Do I want more? If I want more, then what is the company's advertising? Or, then usually what it pays, then definitely be ready to negotiate. In my case, sometimes it was helpful. Like for my internship, I was able to negotiate it to a higher salary, more than I was expecting. So I was happy about that. For my current job, unfortunately, sometimes companies will not negotiate in terms of salaries, but if you're looking for a job in the industry, there are other factors that you can negotiate with. There are like, benefit packages that you can negotiate with. It doesn't have to be in terms of pay. If the company usually, does not go forward, okay, no, we cannot pay you more than this. This is what our budget is. But then you can always leverage on stock options. You can always leverage on health benefits and other things like that. So for me, that is my second, fallback. Like if they're not going to agree to pay me a certain amount, I would rather ask them to negotiate me like, okay, give me more stocks, or, give me more health benefits, or give me more, other benefits that are being offered. A larger company will usually also set some amount aside to pay for, courses that you might want to do when you are being employed with them. So say, for an example, company has set aside $1,000 that they would pay a year for you to pursue courses outside the university, outside the job. Then you can, when you're negotiating, you can say, okay, instead of 1,000, can you bump that up to 1,500 or 2,000, so I can pursue my other courses, since we are not negotiating in terms of salary. So I would say put down, do your research. That, what the pay looks like for that company, what the pay looks like for a position. You'll get a good idea on how much this position makes. Usually the HR is pretty helpful. Don't be afraid to ask them what the company pay range is. Usually never say first that you are expecting so much. Ask them what their range is, so that you can tell them, because if you don't know the range of the company, ask them, what is the pay scale, what is the pay range for this, so that once you know the scale, you know that you whatever amount that was in your head, was it lower or higher? Because if it was lower, they'll pay you low. So you want to know whether it's going to be higher or lower, and you want to go on the higher band and negotiate more. So definitely look for the higher band and try negotiating on the higher side, because for them, if you fall in the lower band and they knew that you did not know what the higher band was, they won't pay you more. So I would definitely say do good research. You might even get false numbers, but if you get false numbers and you think that this is not right, don't be afraid to ask HR what the pay range is for that position.
I would say that for me, I don't know if anybody on this panel is on hourly pay, but I am. I am on hourly wage. And when it comes to hourly wage, especially in healthcare, a lot of people they don't increase your pay. But at the same time, when you get into the job, you get a lot of. First, I only work 3 days out of my 7 days of the week. So out of those 4 other days, I can pick up shifts, and for picking up shifts, I do get premium pay on top of my overtime and regular hourly pay. So in healthcare, there's a lot of room for these kind of things. If you pick up, you do get certain incentives to pick up the shifts, and incentives are extra pay on top of your regular pay. So if you work certain hours, so for example, if you work night shift, sometimes they pay you a little extra for your regular shift just because you're working night shift. So make sure that you know all these benefits, because when I first came in, I didn't know that there was something known as a premium pay, that is an incentive to pick up shifts. I came to know about it from my peers, and they all told me about it. For night shifts, if you work just nights, you do get paid a little bit more, because they need more people for night shifts. It's usually short staffed, because a lot of people, nobody wants to work at night. So those kind of things, you can also find this information since from somebody who already works in the field, who already is on the same position. You can find all of this from them. But at the same time, all of this was also I just looked up the internet, and I looked, okay, what is the hourly pay for nurses aid or PCNAs look like across Ohio, or across the United States. And it did vary depending on what your location is. It does. So yeah, just definitely look out that, talk to your HRs, and then Blair said, do your research. That's where you'll mostly find information. But for healthcare specifically, you do get a lot of incentives on top of your regular pay just to pick up extra shift, because it is short staffed most of the times. So definitely look into that.
Thank you. Okay, I wanted to also mention, I know Blair already mentioned about how in higher education the pay is really low. Really low is what I'll say. Some people might disagree, but I think everyone has mentioned, it's just the benefits that come with it. Because I think one good benefit of working in higher education is if you're working at a university and they offer a degree you want to do, most of them have tuition benefits. So you basically can go to the university for free, or even if you have children, your children can go for free. If you have a partner, your partner can go for free as well. So I think for some people that benefit makes sense. So I think it's just trying to see what makes sense for you. All right, y'all. We still have 4 other questions, but let's see. So I guess we can do this one. So this one is if a company says they don't hire international students, should I still apply and hope that they change their mind? That's
I would say, okay, I'll be honest and say that with some higher ed institutions, I knew I was taking a risk. Like, for example, when I was applying to schools in Florida, I noticed there was a trend where the position I was applying for, which was basically the same at most all of the institutions, like they either kept saying that they don't sponsor, or when I asked, like they would say, "Oh yeah, let me ask HR and I'll get back to you." Never got back to me. That's another problem with higher ed communication. Um, so I'm like, okay, like maybe it's a private school thing, or maybe it's an institution size thing. Like, I'm really wanting to go to Florida. Let me try all these other institutions. And so, after a while, I got the point. So, I'll say that when applying for jobs, like your time is precious, like it is not easy navigating the job search as someone with an immigration status. Like you have to be strategic. Um, you have to sometimes ask, like informally with current employees or through groups, like, do they sponsor? And so, because all of those factors that are involved in the job search process, if you know the institution ain't hiring for that position you're looking for, like, I would say don't waste your time. However, I would also say that, like, in thinking about my position here in my department here, like it depends, like it's a shifty landscape, because it could be where one year, the department isn't sponsoring. And when we think about the pandemic and its effect on higher education, that really put a strain on budgets and funding. And so maybe the year before, the department was open and willing to sponsor, but because of the pandemic, they have to allocate funds elsewhere. And so that sponsorship may be off the table for that year. And then the next year, they may come back and say, okay, we're good now. We could. So I will say it also depends on the year. It depends on like what's happening economically and how that institution is holding up financially. And so if you know that they aren't sponsoring one year, but you really like this institution, inquire the next year, see if anything has changed. Because something just may have, and you may be able to apply again because they're sponsoring again. But in that job search process that you are in at the moment, if you know they ain't sponsoring, don't waste your time. My opinion.
Thanks, Blair.
I agree with Blair.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, and I think one other different point that I would put out there is at my internship, like it was a very, very small company. It was a startup, and I had seen people at the company tell people that we do sponsorships, but look out for those companies that they say that they do a sponsorship, but if you just go in without asking other people, especially when it's a smaller or mid-sized company, that if they really do it, that is something that's like a red flag for smaller companies. They want to get more people on the board. They want to start with a diversified culture at the very beginning. But sometimes smaller companies don't really have the budget to do that, but they want to get there. It's I wouldn't say it's wrong, but because they want to get at that position, they want to have a more diversified team. They advertise that they would do a sponsorship, but some people only have one shot at that sponsorship. So they could be working somewhere else where a company that actually does a sponsorship. So if you think it's a small size company, if you think it's a mid-sized company, and something does not seem right about if they do the sponsorship, really ask somebody who has been sponsored by the company before, ask somebody who is in line for a sponsorship, ask them how long they've been waiting for. Just see, ask around people. Again, it's the same thing. Network with the people who are working at the company, that if the company really does that, and you might find somebody really helpful there, because I've seen situations where a company promises and they don't do it, and it's usually a small size or mid-sized company. And as international students, we don't get too many opportunities to actually waste that time to be at a place where they're not going to do that for us. So, definitely inquire. Definitely inquire.
I actually have personal experience with that. So, as Blair said, there's a lot of like no communication in higher ed, same as with healthcare, especially when you work with a very big institution like Cleveland Clinic. It's number two, like it has a world ranking of number two. It's top ranked in the United States. It's a very big institution. And I like personally, when I applied for this position, I was supposed to start on CPT and then slowly transition to OPT when I'm done with like my like undergrad. So I reach out to my manager, like my nurse manager, who's the manager on the floor. She told me that she has no idea about this. I should reach out to my recruiter. I did that, and then he told me that they don't do sponsorship. But I said that on your application it said that you do, and at that time I didn't know anybody at the institution who were hired on CPT, and then now they do OPT. But now after I'm done, like after like now I do know like people, obviously. But at that time I didn't know anybody. So Cleveland Clinic, like they did not let me start on CPT, even though at that point of time there were people who were actually working on CPT. It was just some miscommunication on the recruiter and the nurse manager part, that I like couldn't start on CPT. But then after I was done with my graduation, I reached out to them. I told them, hey, like I have like people, I know somebody who actually was working on the same like sponsorship, like they were working on CPT and now they're on OPT, and I know like they people have done that in the past. So they got into touch with the recruiter of that person, and that's how like they figured everything out, because my recruiter had not done the international student CPT OPT paperwork in the past, so he had no idea about that. I wouldn't say that it was his fault, but definitely, like as Nitya said, like talk to other people who have been sponsored or who have been on OPT in that like company, and just ask them how the process was for them, because sometimes it could be just as little as like people not like miscommunication where they don't know or they haven't done that like paperwork in the past, so they think okay, like maybe this like is not happening, that this doesn't happen with this position. But in the fact, like it does, like they can put your OPT paperwork in, they can put your CPT paperwork in. So definitely talk to people at that institution. You can find them on LinkedIn. I would say like a lot of people put there on the LinkedIn that LinkedIn as actually the place to find people in like job professionals. So definitely use that resource to find other people in that company and reach out to them.
Right. Thank you. All right, y'all. So two more questions. The first one is, what did your university do to help you prepare for job searching, or what do you wish they did?
I can go because I worked with the career exploration department on campus when I was at Kent State. So I worked with the career office of Kent State University. So I had a lot of people at my um, in my department that I could go and talk to directly. I didn't have to schedule appointments with them. I did have that advantage. So I would say this job did prepare me for job search process, because I could go and talk to a lot of people in my department, and just ask them questions. I talked to the person, Kritika, like she doesn't work with career exploration now. She used to in the past, and I worked very closely with her. So I almost asked all of my like international student like employer questions to her, because she is someone who was international student at a point, so she knows all the ins and outs of it. So definitely, I think working with CED did give me an upper hand in that process, where I could go and talk to people. If okay, like can you take a mock interview for me, or like can you ask me some questions, or can you give me advice, and like how should I approach the employer with this like query. So for me, like it was working with career exploration. So if you have any like if you ever look at a job on Handshake and you're looking for an on-campus job and you see like career exploration is hiring, definitely apply for that job and try to get an interview with them, because it is very, very helpful to work with the career office on campus.
Thank you.
I
Anyone
had
else?
a different experience. So for me, so the career exploration department was less useful, but the ISSS was more useful. My experience was very different in terms of that it was really hard first of all, to get approved for a CPT via a co-op program. There are various ways that you can, work an internship and find a job. But for me, I think it was more of a situation where I was all on my own. So I wish my career exploration department was more helpful in terms of um, posting the right sort of job postings. Like there are a lot of job postings, but sometimes they're not very target or relevant to everybody who studies at the university. They only cater to a small group of people. It's not for everybody. And for someone who's studying in a program that the university is known for and still not being able to find the job that caters to you, it was a little disappointing. So I feel like the career exploration department at the university could have been more helpful. And that applied to me in every case. Like I used to go to career exploration to get my resume done, and to see if I'm doing this right, if I've got the right materials in. But at the end of the day, what got me through was something completely different. So I feel like while the university catered to mock interviews and everything, my mock interview looked nothing like my actual interview. So I feel like the mock interviews at the universities are very generic rather than targeted to different fields, even though we have people who work in different departments. Like you'll have people who cater to like Doreen did for medical. So we have people who target medical, we have people who target engineering, and basically different types. But all of their interviews were very generic. So I could go to medical and engineering and I was asked the same questions. So I was like, okay, where's that difference? Because I was not asked a single question that I was asked in the mock interview. So, it would be really helpful if these interviews were more targeted. Like, this is something that you might get asked. And if the questions were not generic, like the questions are more HR related, then what actually matters. Like HR will definitely ask you your strengths, your weaknesses, and they'll ask you less technical questions. But majority of your interview, a very big chunk of it, is technical questions, and that is what you want to actually be prepared for, rather than your strengths and weaknesses, because that's going to come and go. And that might be specific to my field, because when I compare that 6 hours of my interview, my mock interview was less than 2% of it. So I would say for me, the experience was different, and I would definitely be more, grateful if it was more catered to what I actually wanted, and if I could seek better help. Like, what could I do? So my process, instead of being about roughly 7 months long for getting a job, could have been much shorter. And with the help of career exploration department, there were times where I was told, okay, don't apply till this date, it's too early to apply. But it felt like, because I was working for so long, I gained experience in working for so long, in applying, and used that to finally get a job. So I feel like if it was more tailored, it would be really nice and quicker, and you wouldn't have to go hunt for information as an international student out there.
Yes, to that, hunting for information. Blair?
So I'll say mine was different as well. And I think that was in a lot of ways because I was a grad student, and I can state a lot of the services are tailored to undergrad students. And so it's not like I could just go and say, yeah, career services, take a look at my resume, or, help me with the interview, just because it was not tailored to the grad student experience. The international office helped me in terms of immigration related pieces, going through that OPT process. But you will find that in that international office, and many international offices, most of the professionals in there are not international. And so that also played a factor in being able to figure out where I could get support. I think what helped me out was I was pursuing a field, higher education, student affairs, in which the professionals in these different offices work directly in that area. So, for example, Kritika, who worked in career services, she was a classmate, at one point, and she was also international. So I could speak to her about personal experiences and not necessarily going through the functions and services of the office she worked in,
Mhm.
as well as the international office. Like Maggie, for example, she worked in Res Life. So I could speak to her about her personal experience and her career trajectory as opposed to the structured programs and services that they offered. And so because I was pursuing a field and a job within like oh, in an institution, in a higher ed institution, like I could directly go to different professionals and going back to, I guess, that informal interview type situation. um Ask them about their experiences, ask them about, well, do you have a sense of like what sponsorship, what the immigration process looks like? Even in Res Life, when we had Leo, who was
Mhm.
international, who always came through giving guidance on what that process would look like. And so I say that to say, like, can't say as an institution, I recognize that a lot of their services are tailored to undergrad students because that makes up the majority of the population there. Um, but it would be nice, in some ways where they could work directly with the grad programs office to offer, these job success strategies, and also offer them for students who aren't necessarily pursuing like um, teaching assistantships or research type career fields, or faculty fields. Like for people like me, I'm just trying to enter a staff level position. I'm not trying to go into research. I'm not trying to teach, at least not yet. Like, give me the basics of what to look for, but on a graduate level.
Mhm.
I think that would have been very beneficial. But in general, I think that um, it was luck that I was pursuing the program that I was, and so I still, at the end of the day, feel like I got, in a way, the support that I needed going through that process.
Yeah. I think I was just gonna add to that. I feel like for me, I always felt, I don't know, I feel like universities do international students a big disservice when it comes to career development, because I think universities are very focused on bringing international students to their school and making sure that we graduate, but they don't really talk about, what's next after graduation. So sure, they help you with OPT and they help you with CPT, but they don't really help you with like the H-1B process. I know like a lot of international students who don't even know like the difference. Like you could be CAP exempt, you could go through the lottery. Like a lot of international students don't even know about that. Um, so I feel like there has to be like more education or even having panels like this. Like it would have been helpful to know like international students in different programs who are navigating things like this, because I think a lot of international students, some people might just be shy and don't, they don't make connections like some of us on this call, probably like networking. Some people might not just be that person to put themselves out there. But I feel like if they knew that a panel talking about job searching as an international student existed on campus, like that's something people will go to. So I just think, actually, I was looking, because I know like everyone, we all miss Critica, but
Yes.
I think one is it Case Western, some university in Ohio, they literally just created a new position for a career, like a career consultant, just focusing on international student. So that person will be doing like H-1B conversations in, all of these. Like I just wish every university had that. And I think that's the disservice they do to us is like, yes, we want you to come to our university, but we don't help you get to that next phase of your life. So that's something I wish they did more. And then the last question is, what's the question? So, what advice do you wish you were given before you started job searching?
Just on, you're not gonna find. I mean, if somebody just told me that you have to fish for the resources, maybe I was more mentally prepared for it. That okay, this is gonna require a whole organization chart. That okay, that you need to start doing this now so that you can get to this phase later. So I think if somebody told me here's a flowchart that you can look at, this is how your journey might look.
Mhm.
So I feel like I could have just been more mentally prepared that this is what is going to happen. This is something that I need to be prepared for. There are not a lot of resources out there, so I am going to have to dig through, and this is what I need to do. But I mean, in a way, for me, it was both good and bad. Good in the sense that I'm here on the panel and I can talk about my experience. That okay, somebody else does not have to go through this now. Bad in the sense that it would have just been helpful if somebody told me, like, hey, start here. This is a good place to start, and you'll eventually get there. But if you don't even know the starting point, you're kind of just going around looking at random buttons, clicking random buttons, and doing, okay, this is what this does, this is what this does, until you come to that, okay, don't press this red button. So I feel like it would be nice if somebody showed me that this is the red button. So,
Yeah, as Nitya said, just be patient with the process and definitely talk to somebody who has already gone through this process. I think that is the best way. They already know how the process looks like. Even if before starting your OPT application when you're about to graduate, talk to somebody. I did not have anybody. I don't think Nitya had anybody, and we both had to navigate it by ourselves. So it will literally just be us trying to figure out, okay, I found this, like maybe we should do this, okay, I found this resource, okay, like I use the ISSS like presentation, okay, this is what they say we should do. There were so many times when I was like, okay, my application is complete, but then I was like, no, I need to include this before like actually sending out my application. So definitely talk to somebody who has gone through this process in the past and who are in the field. I think that is the best way to go about, like, when it comes to like job search and even like applying for OPT and any like international student process, like any process, basically just talk to somebody.
I think no, actually, Blair, go ahead.
I was going to say two things. One is finances, actually, like set aside some money. Because we all know, like, being an international student or and an immigrant, or I guess technically a non-immigrant, is an expensive process. From the moment that you get here to the moment that you leave, OPT costs money. Getting some of the materials for your OPT application costs money. Sometimes job processes and traveling and going here and there costs money. And so, whatever your financial source is, try to set aside some monies to contribute to that final process of transitioning from your academic program to your full-time job. And then if you don't have a job that has a steady source of income, connect with your international office. I think Kent State had like an emergency fund. Now, I don't necessarily know if the job search would have applied to that, but a lot of times these offices have funds set aside to help students through this exact process. So bear that in mind. And then my other point would be to give yourself some grace. I know that there were times through my job search process where I would hear from my domestic peers, oh, I landed a job. Oh, I moved on to this interview. Oh, do like all the successes and whatnot. And I'm just sitting here like dying, like I just waiting to hear back, like I know my application is the bomb.com. Is it that I'm not hearing something because I noted that I would need sponsorship or international? It's like you never know. And so know that sometimes because you're international, the process may take longer than your domestic peers. Know that your journey is your own and your experience is your own, and you have done the work to get you to this point, and that will prove worthwhile for you in the end. But just be patient and try not to compare your experience to others.
Thanks, Blair. I think Nitya, you wanted to say something?
Oh yeah, I I do not know if this is job related at all, but as an international student, when I came here in August, and then when come March, I had to file my taxes, and I knew nothing about that. So it was, I mean, So technically, for filing your taxes, there are various agencies who will help you with that at a cost. And when you're working at a university, you're not even getting enough refund to pay that fee. Okay, so it becomes difficult to know how to do this on your own. And universities like ours sometimes prepare guides, but you're not a lawyer. You do not know, what some of those terms mean. You do not know, how much you get. Like you'll just know the numbers, and it's really hard to understand what everything above those numbers actually means. So I feel like as international students who are coming from whole another country and used to whole another tax systems, I hope, like sometime in the future, universities are more mindful about it, that, we are not aware of, how the system works. We are not aware some of your, terms that you might use and even at home. Like I came here from undergrad. I did not do my taxes back home, so for me it was more like, oh, this is an adult thing, but also this is in a new country, so I have no idea, and I think I just have to follow this 2-page guide. It does not tell me a lot. So I guess, just talk to people who have done that before. Talk to other international students who have been there for maybe a year or two. How did you do this? Do you understand this? I know for me and Gureen, we used to scram. Like, okay, do we need to file this? Are we committing a tax fraud? We do not know if we're committing a tax fraud. Are we supposed to mail this in? It's so confusing.
I still don't know.
Yeah, I still don't know if I committed a tax fraud in the past. Like, I don't know. I think I'm doing it right. I don't know.
I feel like there needs to be more education about, this is how you need to do it.
I was gonna say, I don't want to end on a sour note, but I think it's also important to plan, to have an option. I am a planner. Like, I like to know all my options, A, B, C, all the way to Z. So while you're job searching, we're all hoping, you can find an OPT job, 3 years for STEM, 1 year for non-STEM. But it's also, I think it's good to consider what happens if you don't get that. So do you have to go home? Do you move to a different country? I think kind of think of what your backup plan is. And like me, I have a backup plan. I have a backup to the backup. So I think it's very, very important to plan and to be wise as you plan and be strategic. Because, I know it's sad to like come here and do your education and then not be able to find a job, but you have to figure out, do I have to go home? Do I move to Canada because that's close? Do I move to the UK? So just making sure that you're planning out and you're being strategic as well. I think it's very important.
Yep.
That's it. Did anyone have, I don't know, anyone on the panel have any final questions, or anyone in the audience have any other questions? I don't see anything, just people saying, keep up the good work. Yeah. So any final thoughts before we close out? No thoughts? No. I think I also wanted to say this because I was looking at, when I was trying to prepare for this, I think as international student, it's important that you market your skills. So some of the skills that they say international students have, we have good communication. For example, a lot of us speak like 2 or 3 more languages. We take initiatives. We're problem solvers. We're self-reliance, courageous. Some people move to this country when they're very young. Resilience. We also have a very diverse perspective because a lot of us have either lived in different places or have different experiences or have been surrounded by different environment. So we have skills. I think as international students, just make sure that you're marketing yourself through every avenue possible. So I hope that this session was extremely helpful for y'all. I also want to say just thank you to all the panel for joining and for having this conversation with us. Thank you all so much. Panel, any final things?
Thank you, Winnie, for having us here.
Thank you.
Very helpful. Yeah.
Yeah. I hope it was helpful. I know a lot of international students now who are currently searching for jobs, and they were like, "Oh my gosh, I'm stressed." I'm like, "Well, let's do a panel." So, thanks y'all so much for attending. Thank you. Bye, everyone.